The night my brother got engaged, my mother called me before she even called our grandmother. "We need the venue deposit by Friday," she said. "No congratulations. No how are you doing. Just a number $4,000 delivered like a weather report." I said okay. I always said okay. That was 3 years ago. And if I'm being honest with myself, that phone call was the moment I should have seen everything coming. But I didn't. I was 28 years old, running a small accounting firm I'd built from a spare bedroom and a lot of sleepless nights. And I genuinely believed that being the one who could help meant I was supposed to help. That's what my family had taught me. That capability was the same thing as obligation. My name is irrelevant to this story. What matters is what I did, what they did, and what happened one Sunday afternoon at my parents' house in Marietta, Georgia, when my sister stood up from the kitchen table and told me in front of everyone that they had made a decision about me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I am the middle child, which in my family meant I was invisible until I became useful. My older brother, I'll call him my brother, because that's what he is, though some days the word feels generous, is 4 years older than me and has spent most of his adult life being charming enough that people forget to notice he never finishes anything. He started a landscaping business that lasted 8 months. He went back to school for real estate and stopped going after 1 semester. He got engaged to a woman who was perfectly nice and perfectly aware that someone else would be paying for most of their life together. My younger sister is 24. She's the baby, the one my parents look at the way you look at something fragile. She's not fragile. She's just never been asked to carry anything, so she never developed the muscles for it. And then there's me. I started my firm at 26 with $11,000 I'd saved, working 60-hour weeks at a mid-size accounting office downtown. I had 3 clients in the first month. By the time I was 29, I had a staff of 4 and enough revenue that I could breathe without counting the inhale. I was proud of it. Still am. I built it alone, and I want to be clear about that, because my family had a way of absorbing my success into their own story, as if my stability was something that had simply occurred near them, like good weather. The financial help started small. A few hundred here for my brother's car repair, my mother's dental work, which insurance covered partially and I covered the rest, my father's back surgery copay, my sister's first and last month's rent when she moved into her apartment, an apartment she chose based on what I could contribute, not what she could afford. Over 3 years, I kept a spreadsheet. Not because I expected to be paid back. I kept it the way you keep a journal because writing things down made me feel less like I was disappearing. The total, when I added it up the month before everything fell apart, was a little over $62,000. I want you to sit with that number for a moment. $62,000. Not loans, not investments, just money that left my account and went into the machinery of my family's lives and was never spoken of again, except when they needed more. My brother's wedding was set for October, a Saturday, a venue outside the city with a terrace and string lights and a catering minimum that made my stomach turn when I saw the invoice. I was the one who found the venue. I was the one who negotiated the payment schedule. I was the one who sat on the phone with the caterer for 40 minutes going over dietary restrictions for a guest list I hadn't been consulted about. My future sister-in-law, I'll call her my brother's wife, because that's what she became, was not a bad person. I want to say that clearly. She was just someone who had married into a system already in motion, and she didn't question it, because why would you question a system that worked in your favor? 4 months before the wedding, my brother called me on a Tuesday evening. He asked if I could cover the remaining venue balance. $11,000. He said he'd pay me back after the honeymoon when things settled down. I asked him what things settling down looked like, specifically. He said, "Come on, you know how it is." I did know how it was. That was the problem. I transferred the money the next morning. I opened my spreadsheet and typed in the date, the amount, and in the notes column I wrote, "Venue balance, full payment, no repayment timeline provided." I don't know why I added that last part. Maybe some part of me was already preparing for something I couldn't name yet. The Sunday it happened was in late November, 6 weeks after the wedding. The weather had turned, and my mother had made pot roast, which she only did when she wanted the house to smell like everything was fine. I noticed that when I walked in, the deliberateness of it, the pot roast and the good plates and the way my father was sitting in the living room with the television off, which he never did. My brother and his wife were already there. My sister was sitting at the kitchen counter with her phone face down, which she also never did. I sat down. My mother brought out the food. We talked about nothing for 20 minutes, the neighbors, the weather, a show my sister was watching. I remember thinking that the meal felt rehearsed, that everyone was speaking slightly too carefully, the way people do when they've agreed in advance not to mention something. Then my sister put down her fork. She looked at me across the table with an expression I can only describe as prepared, like she had practiced this in a mirror. "We need to talk to you about something," she said. "All of us." I looked around the table. My father was looking at his plate. My mother had her hands folded in front of her. My brother was looking at the window. "We've been talking," my sister continued, "and we all think that the financial dynamic in this family isn't healthy anymore. For any of us." I waited. "We feel like the way things have been set up puts too much pressure on everyone. It creates an imbalance. And we think it would be healthier if going forward, everyone handled their own finances independently." I looked at her, then at my mother, then at my brother, who still had not looked at me. "That sounds reasonable," I said slowly. "But I'm not sure I understand what you're actually saying." My sister took a breath. "We voted," she said, "as a family. And we think that you should step back from being the person everyone comes to. We think it's created an unhealthy dependency. And honestly," she paused, "we think it's made you a little controlling." The word landed on the table like something dropped from a height. Controlling. I had paid for my brother's wedding venue. I had paid for my father's surgery. I had paid for my sister's apartment. I had said yes, every single time, to every single ask, without negotiation or complaint. And the word they had landed on was controlling. I didn't say anything for a long moment. I could hear the refrigerator hum. Outside, a car passed. "You voted," I said. "It wasn't about voting against you," my mother said, finally looking up. "It was about making a group decision about what's best for the family." "What did the vote look like?" I asked. "What were the options?" Nobody answered that. "I want to understand," I said, keeping my voice even. "Because the way I'm hearing this, you sat down without me, discussed my role in this family, made a decision about how I should behave going forward, and then invited me to dinner to inform me. Is that accurate?" My sister's jaw tightened. "You're doing it right now. You're making this into something analytical instead of just hearing what we're saying." "I am an accountant," I said. "I think analytically. That's also what paid for the roof over this meal." My mother put her hand on the table. "That's exactly what we mean. You bring up money as if it's a weapon." I looked at her for a long time. "I haven't mentioned money once," I said. "You have." I drove home that night with both hands on the wheel and the radio off. I wasn't crying. That surprised me. Actually, I'd expected to cry, because that was usually what happened when my family found a new way to make me feel wrong for existing in the particular way I existed. But there was nothing, just a quiet, flat clarity, like the moment after a power outage when you suddenly understand how much noise you'd been living with. I got home. I made tea. I opened my laptop. I had been maintaining that spreadsheet for 3 years, but I had never done anything with it. It was just a record, a document of things I knew had happened, in case I ever needed to remind myself they were real. That night, I made a second document. I copied every line item from the spreadsheet: dates, amounts, descriptions, the text messages where the requests had been made, the bank confirmations, and I organized it into something that looked less like a personal journal and more like an exhibit. I didn't send it to anyone. I just made it. I needed to see it in a form that couldn't be argued with. Then I did something I had never done before. I called my best friend. I'd known her since college. She was an attorney, not a family lawyer, but someone who understood how these things worked, and I told her everything. She was quiet for a moment when I finished. "Do you want advice?" she said. "Or do you want to tell me what you've already decided?" "Tell me what I've already decided," I said. She exhaled slowly. "You're going to honor their request. You're going to stop." "Yes," I said. "And you're going to let the consequences come." "Yes." "Okay," she said. "Then the document you just made? Keep it, update it, and don't do anything with it until you need it." I asked her when I would need it. "You'll know," she said. The first 2 months were quiet. I didn't call. I didn't offer. When my mother texted me in December asking if I could help cover my sister's credit card minimum, she'd had some unexpected expenses, I wrote back 3 words. "I can't help." No explanation. No apology. My mother didn't respond. My brother texted me in January. He and his wife were having trouble with their lease renewal. The landlord had raised the rent significantly, and they were looking at their options. He wanted to know if I had room. I wrote back, "I don't. Good luck figuring it out." Again, no response. My sister stopped texting me entirely. My father, who had never been the one to ask for money directly, called me once in February. He said he missed me. He asked if I was doing okay. He sounded genuinely sad. And that was the hardest part of those months. My father, who I believed actually loved me in his quiet and limited way, caught in the undertow of something the rest of them had constructed. I told him I was okay. I told him I missed him too, but I kept the call short, because I had learned by then that love and boundarylessness are not the same thing, and I couldn't afford to let one become a door for the other. Spring came. The firm had a good quarter. I took a solo trip to Portugal, Lisbon, 5 days, a small hotel near the waterfront, and I ate dinner alone every night, and walked for hours, and felt, for the first time in a long time, like I was living in a life that was actually mine. I bought my mother a postcard. I didn't mail it. I just bought it and kept it in my coat pocket for the whole trip, because I hadn't yet figured out what to do with the part of me that still wanted her to be proud of me. The call came on a Tuesday in April. It was my mother, and she was crying before I even finished saying hello. My brother and his wife had separated. He had moved back into my parents' house. My sister had lost her job, not been laid off, but let go, for reasons my mother described vaguely, and I did not press on. The apartment was 3 months behind on rent. My father's truck needed a transmission repair that was going to cost more than the truck was worth. I know things have been difficult between us, my mother said. But we need you. I sat with that sentence. We need you. Not. I was wrong. Not. We handled that badly. Not. We've been thinking about what we said to you in November, and we understand now how that must have felt. Just. We need you. The same way they'd always needed me as a function, not a person. Mom, I said, I need to ask you something, and I need you to really hear me. She said okay. At Thanksgiving at that dinner, you all told me that I was controlling, that the financial dynamic was unhealthy, that it would be better for everyone if I stepped back. Those were the exact words used. Do you remember that? Silence. I honored that, I said. I stepped back. I stopped. I let everyone handle their own finances, like you asked. And I need you to understand that what you're asking me right now is to undo the thing you told me was hurting the family. That was different, my mother said. That was about the pattern. This is an emergency. The pattern was made of emergencies, I said. Every single time. There was always a reason. So you're saying no. I closed my eyes. I'm saying I love you and Dad. I'm saying I hope things get easier. But yes, Mom. I'm saying no. She hung up. I expected to feel something dramatic. Guilt, relief, grief, some kind of reckoning. Instead, I just sat in my kitchen with the phone on the table in front of me and watched the light change through the window until it got dark. A week later, my brother called. Not to ask for money, or not directly, but to tell me I was being selfish, that I had resources and I was choosing to withhold them, and that was its own kind of cruelty. He said I had always used money to make myself feel superior to the rest of them, and that the family had been afraid to say it for years. I let him finish. Then I said, I have a document. It lists every dollar I've transferred to members of this family over the last 3 years, with dates, amounts, and the messages in which each request was made. The total is $62,430. I'm not going to send it to you, but I want you to know it exists, and I want you to think about whether the word you want to use for what I did with that money is superior. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Why would you keep something like that? He finally said. Because I knew someday someone would tell me it hadn't happened, I said. He hung up. I didn't hear from him again for several months. I'm telling this story now from a place far enough away from it that I can see the shape of it clearly. My father and I have rebuilt something slower and more honest than before, built on phone calls where we talk about his garden and my work, and carefully avoid the topics that still have edges. My mother and I are in an in-between place. Not estranged, not close. Something still forming. My brother and I are polite when we're in the same room, which isn't often. My sister reached out last year not to ask for anything, just to talk. It was awkward and short, and we haven't talked since. But the fact that she tried means something to me, even if I'm not sure yet what. What I want to say to you, and I mean this for whoever is watching this, and recognizing some piece of their own story in it, is that the most dangerous thing about being the capable one in a family is that your capability gets mistaken for consent. Because you can do something, everyone decides you should. Because you're not breaking, they decide you're not bending. Because you say yes, they stop checking whether they should be asking. The spreadsheet wasn't about revenge. It was about evidence proof that I had existed, that the labor of my love had been real, that I wasn't imagining the weight I'd been carrying. I never sent it to anyone. I didn't need to. The point was never to punish them. The point was to know, in my own body, that I had not made it up. The $62,000 is gone. I've made peace with that. What I got back in exchange was harder to quantify but worth more the ability to sit in a quiet apartment on a Tuesday night and feel like the life around me actually belonged to me. The ability to say no and survive it. The discovery that the love I'd been buying on installments was something I'd always been capable of giving myself. I still have the postcard from Lisbon. It's in a drawer now. I look at it sometimes when I need to remember what it felt like to walk alone through a city where nobody needed anything from me. It felt like the beginning of something, and I think, finally, it was.